My name is Jim Beck, and I serve as a volunteer on the Chamber of Commerce of Southwest Indiana Government Affairs Committee. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing State Representative Suzanne Crouch, who is a candidate seeking re-election to State Representative District 78. Please note that the same set of questions will be used for all candidates running for State Representative. Welcome, Representative Crouch.
Thank you.
Let's get started. So again, just for the record, if you could restate your name, the officer you're seeking, and your current position and employment.
My name is Suzanne Crouch, and I am seeking State Representative, District 78, and I am State Representative and do that pretty much full time.
Great. Representative Crouch, if re-elected, what would be your top 3 priorities, and how would you seek to fund and implement those priorities while serving in the state legislature?
Well, as Vice Chairman of Ways and Means, we're entering a budget year. And so my number 1, number 2, and number 3 priority is the budget. And it's extremely important that the budget is structurally balanced, meaning we're taking in more revenues than we're actually spending. We need to ensure that we have a healthy surplus at the end of the 2-year biennium, and we also need to ensure that there are no tax increases. So when you talk about 1, 2, 3, I guess that's 1, 2, 3, not necessarily in that order.
Do you support the Kernan-Shepherd initiative? And please explain your answer.
I've supported those parts of the Kernan-Shepherd initiative that have come before us for votes. I supported one commissioner with the referendum. I supported eliminating the township assessors in counties that were under a certain population limit, and then those that were over that population limit, there would be a referendum for them. So that the initiatives that have come before us, I believe I have been pretty consistent in supporting them. A lot of them haven't actually made it through the process, so we'll stay tuned and see if any of those come forth in the future.
Okay, thank you very much. During the next session of the General Assembly, legislators will be asked to write a new budget, which you mentioned. And what priorities would you advocate in that process? And then furthermore, if a budget increase is needed, what taxes would you increase, or what budget cuts would you propose?
Well, hopefully the revenues will keep ticking upward, and so that we will have perhaps a little more to work with in terms of funding the budget. There are a number, in this tough economy, there have been a number of cuts that have been taken either voluntarily or at the direction of the legislature for agencies and for other areas. And certainly, we would work, or I would work to restore those cuts and to try to make agencies and make people whole. Of course, that's all dependent upon the revenues. In terms of tax increases, I've already stated I don't believe that we need to have tax increases. I anticipate that our revenues will be such that we can adequately fund what needs to be funded and still not pass on the tax increase to losers, to working families, particularly in this economic environment.
Mm-hmm. Representative Crouch, what do you consider to be the top transportation and infrastructure priorities for Southwest Indiana? And what plans do you have for, again, funding them?
Well, thank you for that question. Of course, I-69 continues and remains number 1 priority for Southwest Indiana. And Section 4 and 5, I believe, are scheduled to be completed by the end of 2015. And of course, then we'll be looking at Section 6. And currently, they're doing environmental to see if the current road from Bloomington up to Indianapolis is adequate to bear the traffic, or whether we need to do some upgrades with that. And of course, they have to come back. They, meaning NDOT, has to come back to the legislature if, in fact, they decide to go through Martinsville. They have to come back to the legislature for approval before they can move in that direction. So there's still a lot to be decided, and there's still a lot of financial issues and revenues that need to be in place, and we're going to have to look at in terms of being able to continue to fund I-69 past Crane. But again, I'm hoping that there will be no tax increase. If I can share with you on the transportation, I think there's another issue on transportation. We're going to have to look at innovative ways and perhaps look at what other states are doing and how they're funding those infrastructure projects in these times of economic crisis. It's really pretty interesting. My sister lives in York, South Carolina, and they've been there about 10 years. And so in traveling to and from York, I have been struck by the amount of road construction they have done in that county over the past probably 5 or 6 years. And by every road project, there is a sign, and it says this project is due to pennies for progress. So I spoke to INDOT about it, and they did some research, and what they found out is that, it's my understanding, the South Carolina legislature passed enabling legislation that would allow counties to go to their voters for a referendum and seek a 1-cent increase, sales tax increase on the gasoline sold in that particular county, and then those revenues would be used for road projects dedicated in that county. It's interesting because that program came into effect in 1997, and it has had to go before the voters a number of times since then, and has raised anywhere from $150 to $200 million each time it goes before the voters, and that money is spent in that county. Interestingly enough, in 2011, it went before the voters again in York County, and they passed at 82%, which is about as high as you can get. I'm not saying that's what we should do, but that certainly is something that we should be looking at, as well as other projects, to allow, not only to allow the state to have adequate funding for road projects, but to give locals the tools that would allow them to look at being able to do their road projects also. And I want to again note that in South Carolina, it is by referendum. It is not something that the legislature passed tax increase, or the locals passed the tax increase. It was up to the constituents and to the voters in that county to decide whether they wanted to be able to have road projects in their county. And it's absolutely incredible, the road projects that they have done, and actually the development that it has spurred in that county. So anyway, I think that's one of the things that we're all going to have to look at, is how can we continue to move forward and continue with the infrastructure projects, which of course we all know helps to spur economic development, without putting an undue burden on the taxpayer and allowing the taxpayer to have a say.
Pretty innovative approach you learned just by getting out and traveling. And
Yeah.
so, you know, bringing stuff back to Indiana. Good thought. What would you do, moving on, what would you do to encourage the construction, under the topic of I-69, the bridge over the Ohio River between Evansville and Henderson?
You know, that's interesting. I spoke to INDOT about that recently, and they won't really be looking at the actual bridge construction probably till after they're through with Section 6 of I-69. So we're looking at probably a 3-4 year period out. I know that they're going to look at the twin bridges and the capability of those particular bridges in terms of being able to handle the traffic, and certainly they have quite a bit of useful life to them. So that's all kind of in the pipeline. It's out there. We know it's something that we need to look at. We do have a little bit of a cushion in terms of when we need to specifically address it, but I imagine we'll be, as I-69 comes to completion, we'll be looking more closely at that particular project.
Government does not create jobs, but does create conditions that make additional jobs more or less likely. What conditions or economic development tools would you like to see improved upon or added in order to stimulate economic growth, create jobs, and retain the current employees that we have here in Southwest Indiana now?
Well, we all know that education is critical to economic development, and there is an economic development committee, interim study committee, that is looking at how education does impact economic development and what kinds of things we can do in education to be able to prepare our workforce for the future. It's really interesting. I had met within the past, I'm going to say month, with 2 presidents and CEOs of manufacturing companies here in Evansville. And interestingly enough, I also had my car detailed, and I had the same concern from the gentleman who detailed the car, and that is they can't get people to work. They can't find people to work. And that it was amazing to me, because in this time of high unemployment and you know, a lack of jobs, that we can't find people to work in the jobs that we have out there. So I think we really need to, and I believe that the gubernatorial candidates and Governor Daniels also have said we need to start looking also at workforce development and at career and technical vocational development within the school system, because not every child, not every student is going to go to college. Therefore, we need to be sure that we're preparing them to be productive members of society. In addition, that committee is also looking at all the tax credits, incentives that are being offered to attract and to develop economic development, and looking at which ones are effective, which ones aren't, what needs to be tweaked. Of course, we reduced the corporate income tax rate from 8.5 to 6.5, and looking at even perhaps reducing it even more. And of course, we did eliminate or phasing out the inheritance tax, which also helps economic development, particularly among reforming communities. So there are a number of things we've done, and there are certainly a lot more that we need to do to prepare our students and our workforce for the future, and to ensure that when there's jobs out there, we have people that are able to fill them.
That's very good. Shifting gears in a completely different direction, substance abuse, particularly methamphetamine, is a very costly community problem in terms of law enforcement, crime, the judiciary, fire hazard, environmental concerns. The list goes on and on. What changes in the approach to this problem would you suggest, and how would you find any new strategies?
Well, it's a horribly devastating problem for our community in particular, since we have been, designated as the #1 meth county in the state, and it has a devastating effect on families and on economic development and the quality of life that we have in our community. Therefore, we have to be very, very diligent and serious about addressing that issue. What the legislature did is they did pass legislation that took effect in January of this year that allows pharmacists on real time to be able to check and see if someone who's coming in to get pseudoephedrine has purchased that anywhere else within the state. That did take effect in January this year. I am anticipating that we will have some report on that at the Health Finance meeting here over the summer interim. Because before we jump off and do something else, we need to see if what we did is having any kind of an impact at all. If not, then I think we need to look at taking additional steps and moving forward to address the issue. And some of it is, some of it is disturbing, because I think it's cultural also, reflective of our cultural and our society, and those are even bigger issues that are going to take a whole lot more than just me to figure out how to address those.
Finally, what is your long-term vision for Southwest Indiana, and what specific ideas or proposals would you suggest to improve the quality of life here in our region?
I remember growing up not being particularly enamored, with Evansville, and thinking, I want to go out and find real life and, have some excitement. And so we've always kind of been known as a great place to settle down and raise a family. I think we need to figure out how we can be a great place to end up growing up and staying here and being members of Evansville community and being productive. And I think there's a number of steps that are being taken that, are good first steps. I think the mayor's initiative on fitness is good. I mean, I think engaging young people at an early age and trying to change lifestyles is good. But the Evansville that I envision is a community where all ages and all groups and all ethnicities can participate in a vibrant, thriving community, and just figuring out how that is going to happen, it's going to take really the work and the efforts of all of us. What I can do at the legislature is I can, vote on measures and take steps that will help to develop a good quality of life for all of our citizens here, for all age groups. But it's something that's going to take a community effort, and it's going to take all of us working together to ensure that people can be born here, people can live here, people don't want to leave here, and they want to stay and continue to grow and be a part of our community.
Fantastic. We greatly appreciate your time today, Representative Crouch.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
If you have a campaign website or any contact information that you'd like to share?
Not at this point in time. I'll be happy to give some to you.
Okay. For our viewers, this interview and all of the candidate interviews that are being conducted by the Chamber of Commerce will be accessible on the Chamber's website. And that address is www.ccswin.com. And please note that the content of this video interview and all the candidate interviews are only for the authorized use by the Chamber of Commerce of Southwest Indiana.